Peter Parker has had it rough the past few months, moving away with his wife only to be brought back to New York. But with the return of his greatest foe, Norman Osborn, things have gotten even crazier. With the loss of his brother and daughter, Peter Parker and his wife Mary Jane must cope with their losses. Between their return to college, Norman Osborn, the Stacy family, new gangs, ninjas, and the Trapster, will they rise above it all or crack under the weight? Welcome to the Forgotten Era, where we'll answer all those questions and more. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Forgotten Era podcast. It's me, Ethan. I'm always here, and you can't get rid of me. And today, I am joined by a guest host. This is Louise.
Hello.
Louise is a follower of my Instagram, as I'm sure some other people are. And when I was looking for, possible people to hop on to the show for specific episodes, Louise was kind enough to reach out, and here we are. So if you want to tell a little bit about yourself, kind of your history with Spider-Man, your interests and whatnot, feel free.
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm an independent filmmaker and screenwriter in the Chicago suburbs, and I've been reading Spider-Man since I was very young. Basically, since I was as far as I can tell, since I was 4 years old. It all started when I went into a thrift store and I found the trade paperback for Spider-Man Carnage with the first 3 issues that he appeared in. And it kind of became like an obsession ever since, where I watched the Tobey Maguire films, I watched the 90s show, Spectacular Spider-Man growing up, and I read a lot of the books, kind of just whatever I could get my hands on as a kid that, I would find at the library or at the store. A lot of it being Clone Saga, because my library had a lot of the complete Clone Saga epic collections. And I would just kind of they would be coming out and they would basically immediately be put on the library shelves, and I would pick them out and I would read them and in order. And that was kind of the first time I was ever really invested in a full comic storyline like that. So because of that, I have a very deep personal childhood nostalgia for that era, and especially for my favorite Spider-Man story. And I know I'm not sure how popular opinion this is. I doubt that it is, but Maximum Carnage. I grew up reading Maximum Carnage. I read it front to back so many times. I wore out that trade paperback, and I still have it.
Nice.
I own it twice. No, 3 times because of the omnibus. But some other close favorites would be The Child Within. Obviously, Kraven's Last Hunt is a classic. Soul of the Hunter. So, very much a DeMatteis fan here.
I'm sensing a theme here.
And I really love the Ditko era. I love those early books so very much. And I've never gone through the entirety of the Romita era, front to back, and I'm hoping to do that sometime soon. I've read a lot of those stories just kind of in random order throughout the years, and a lot of that stuff as well. I love the stuff from the 80s, but the 90s, as much as I do still have problems with it, it is still my favorite era of Spider-Man, because it's the one that I grew up reading, and it's the one that I just am most personally invested in. I love married Peter Parker with, Mary Jane, and just all the struggles that come with that, the existence of Venom and Carnage, the Jackal being a factor in his life, Ben Reilly, Kane, the Chameleon, all of that kind of stuff. And Vermin. I adore Vermin. As these Vermin and Vulture are both some of my favorite villains in the Rogues Gallery.
Vulture's a cool one. It's not one you hear super often.
No, yeah, it always upsets me when I hear people say, "Oh, Vulture is a little too goofy. He's not menacing." And it's have you read some of those books that he appeared in?
What Spider-Man villain isn't goofy? It all depends on the writers. But absolutely, when you have stuff like Life Theft, if we're going 90s, but even after that with, him with his cancer and kidnapping children and all this shit, it's the Vulture is
he's not all goofy. I mean, like the only one I could see like that's a goofy villain is like maybe Shocker, because like what does he do? But even then, I
But
mean,
yeah, like
superior
some of
foes
my favorite Vulture stories. I really love the I love Funeral Arrangements by
rearrangements. Yeah,
Demetrius, and all of the Roger Stern Vulture stories are probably my favorite.
those are good. Especially, I mean, funeral arrangements is one of those where when people are always talking about like DeMatteis and like Child Within and stuff, and I'm like, funeral arrangements is one of those ones that gets kind of left out, and I really like that book, that story.
No,
It's
yeah,
good.
it's a shame. It's a shame because it's really good, and I really love that they're actually able to do a lot of character stuff with Aunt May in that book, which you don't typically get to see.
Right. So I mean, DeMatteis cared about characters so much. It doesn't matter who they were, how
Mhm,
inconsequential, minuscule they were. They were. I mean, not to say that Aunt May's unimportant, but especially at that time of Spider-Man, she she
mhm.
kind of was. So to have a story all about grieving Nathan, who was a character that almost barely existed, was kind of a big deal.
I actually quite like Nathan, and I've always kind of wanted them to bring in Nathan in one of the adaptations, whether it be one of the movies or one of the animated shows. I would like to see him brought back in something because a lot of the stories that I grew up reading, he was a part of, and like especially those Vulture stories, he was quite a big part in a lot of my favorite Vulture stories. So I I would just like to see him adapted sometime.
Fingers crossed that one day, sooner or later, they'll get their head out of like
Mhm.
all the greatest hits, and they'll actually adapt something that's kind of like not underground, but less recognized. Because I feel like
No,
that's
yeah, it seems
we're
like
we're
for the
so stuck
past.
in this like readapting the same four things kind of cycle.
No, yeah, they seem to take more from adaptations for adaptations at this point.
Yeah, yeah. The '90s show is like the blueprint, which I think is crazy, but also I get it. It happens.
At the same time, I feel like they don't take enough from that show.
Yeah, they take all the like all like new presented ideas from that show that bother comic book people, but even the comic books are taking from that now. So it's like there's no escape from certain characterizations of things and whatnot.
Hmm.
So it, I, I guess it's just the way that the cookie crumbles in a way. When are they going to do the Clone Saga?
Indeed.
That's actually a joke. I don't want them to really adapt the Clone Saga into anything. So
I'm still hopeful that we can get a somewhat decent adaptation at some point.
see, I'm kind of the. I don't know if I've ever said this on record, but I'm kind of like in the boat that it would work best as like the old school DC animated movies. Like if they did that of the Clone Saga, I think
Yeah,
it would work. But otherwise, it's kind of hard because there's so much like you have to lead up to that would just take
yeah.
forever to do like properly in my mind because I'm gonna nitpick the crap out of it. But who knows?
And
Maybe they'll do the Tom Holland Clone Saga and everyone will love it.
there's always the fear that the person that gets their hands on it is somebody who doesn't even like the material and is just going to do whatever the hell with like a skin of like the Clone Saga and
Yeah,
then pretend that they cared all along when they really didn't.
I feel like we're getting past that point, thankfully, in time because most of the people that are getting these higher up positions at Marvel and whatnot were kids during that time, so they
Yeah,
have a little more like attachment and care for it. But even then, like the old guard will always be looking over the shoulder. That's
and
why
hopefully
I'm
for not too much longer.
yeah, I'm thankful for editors like Danny Chasm on all of JMD's current books at Marvel, who's like Clone Saga and '90s super fan, so he like makes sure that everything is like faithful and respectful, because otherwise he wouldn't want to read it, which is always nice. So we need more people like that
Yes, we do.
in charge. Um, so you're a big symbiote person. We've talked about that off the recording.
This is true.
So and I know you said one of the first books you read was that original Carnage trade, which has that
Yeah.
super cool cover. I love that cover. What is it about the symbiotes that kind of draws you, especially because the issues that we're doing today have to do with the symbiotes. So it's kind of, I'm interested to see your take on that.
Well, a lot of people, when they get asked that question, they tend to just kind of talk about the symbiotes themselves. So you tend to talk about like, oh, the lore and the fact that it's these like cool creatures with cool designs that, you know, have slime and giant tongues, and they just look really cool. And I typically, the stuff that always drew me to the character, besides the designs, because they are really cool, is Eddie Brock and Cletus Cassidy, like the actual hosts and who they were as people. And that's always been the drawing point to me. Maybe I didn't realize that as a kid, but as I grew older, I kind of realized it through looking at more Venom comics and looking through like adaptations and kind of realizing that that aspect was lacking and missing for me, and that was the disconnect, was that it didn't have the aspect that I liked about these characters in the first place, which was the hosts and like the characters, who they were. Because a lot of times nowadays, especially with Venom, they act as if it's, kind of like, oh, anyone can be Venom, but it's like, no, it was specifically the combination of Eddie Brock and this symbiote that created Venom. If you're going to be doing this, just create a completely different symbiote character. You would invest me a lot more if you did at that point, But
Makes
the thing
sense.
that made me interested was, especially with Eddie Brock, was his kind of like delusion as a person, where he truly believes he's been sent here to do God's work, that he is someone who is innocent, and now he's devoted to protect innocence. And he's deluded himself into thinking that Spider-Man is a villain who hurts innocent people because he indirectly caused them to lose his job. And there's like a lot of childhood trauma with his father that created that kind of delusion within him. And a lot of that also has to do with his Catholic upbringing. And I love all of that stuff. And I love how that informs his actions as Venom. And I love how Carnage is kind of the complete inverse of that, where Carnage also has that childhood trauma with his family, and it did the exact opposite, a completely different delusion where religion has nothing to do with it. He's very much someone who's like, establishment and order, that's the problem. Chaos is the solution. There is no God, etc. Just there should be no rules. I am the ultimate insanity, yada yada. He's deluded himself into thinking that he is this like evil incarnate when he really isn't. He very much is this like wounded, like stuck as a kid in his head. And a lot of the best stories delve into both of those characters in that way, where they delve into, Eddie's relationship with his his Catholicism, and Cletus's relationship with like his childhood trauma and why that makes him lash out the way that he does, and his kind of inability to accept that he's vulnerable. That he's not like this indestructible creature he wants everyone to think he is. Just I think that all of that stuff is great. I think the best Venom and Carnage stories do a good job of really developing that and exploring that. And a lot of the worst ones, just basically ignore all of that and bring them down to the base level of symbiotes are cool.
That was really great. That's how you can tell we're dealing with a screenwriter, by the way. We got the whole character analysis there. That was really great. I mean, see that really, having it worded and explained in that way
Mm-hmm.
allows me to understand why somebody would have that attachment, because everybody I've ever known in my life, like in person most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
the only things that they like about Venom and Carnage, like you said, is they look cool.
Yeah.
So it's like it's nice to have someone who actually deeply cares about them on a fundamental level.
No,
Because
yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
I would say probably my favorite Carnage story is Maximum Carnage, because in a way, it, like you've been saying, it just like it wholly focuses on just how like fucked in the head Cletus Cassidy is from years and years of like constant trauma, and his view of the world is just like, let's burn it all down, and no
exactly.
rhyme or reason. And I mean, on the flip side, you do have Venom, who's playing protector and willing to
Mhm.
like do what needs to be done, team up with the people he doesn't want to team up with, who still end up betraying him in the end. But but I really like that take. That was really great.
Thank you. No, yeah, Maximum Carnage, like I mentioned earlier, it is my favorite Spider-Man story, and it is especially because of how it explores Carnage, but also just how it explores Peter Parker and his ethics, his
Yeah.
morals, and kind of like the breaking point of that. Like how far can it be stretched before he, is willing to cross lines like that, which
Every
is
everybody knows that Buscema page. Everybody knows it. If you've read
it's so
Maximum
good.
Carnage,
It is
you
so
know that
good.
page. But yeah, no, I've got a Maximum Carnage shelf in my room, so I don't.
Love
It's not like
that.
one of my favorites, but like
Mhm.
I have a big attachment to it, especially as like a '90s fan. So that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, and there's so many great like 90s Venom and Carnage stories that a lot of people tend to kind of forget. One thing that there's like these two Carnage miniseries that, no, not miniseries, they were one shots that came out in like 96, 97. Mind Bomb and It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
Everyone always talks about Mind Bomb in particular, and I think it's a shame because that one kind of portrays a lot more of like a one note perspective of Carnage as a character, where he's, portraying himself as like evil incarnate to this psychiatrist and it drives him insane. It has really fantastic art from Kyle Hotz that I adore, and I definitely loved it when I was younger. It is very edgy. I don't know if it's aged the best, but it is a very disturbing little one shot that everyone loves to bring up. And not enough people bring up It's a Wonderful Life, which was a direct sequel of sorts, written by somebody completely different, but still with Kyle Hotz doing the art. And that one actually does explore how that vision of himself that he portrayed in Mind Bomb is just a facade to kind of mask that fragility and kind of like sadness that he actually has, this like vulnerability that he doesn't want people knowing that he has. And
I don't think I've ever read It's a Wonderful Life. I know I've read Mind Bomb like a long time ago,
mhm.
but I don't think I've ever checked out that other one. I'll have to.
Oh, definitely, it's definitely one like on the higher end of Carnage stories because it actually bothers to explore the aspects of the character that I like so much, and it feels like it kind of adds a lot to what we learn about him in Maximum Carnage. And I'm forgetting the name of it, but there was a one shot issue in an Amazing Spider-Man annual, the one from
Oh,
1994.
28.
Yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the Stephen Butler
where
one.
yes, that's the one. Yeah, great art in that one. But you kind of learn about this friend that Cletus had when he was younger, when he was a child, where he actually did have an attachment to somebody, and how he feels now as an adult, wanting to kind of hide that, wanting to kind of just make sure that that doesn't exist, that people don't know that he ever felt affection for somebody at all. And I just think that that's interesting. And this book, It's a Wonderful Life, it actually does delve into that a little bit more by kind of exploring how he felt about that character.
Huh. Well, that's cool. That'd be a good double feature for just a nighttime read for sure.
For sure.
Cool. Well, now that we have our answers, would you like to get into the books this week?
Yeah, yeah,
Cool.
it is.
So today we are covering 4 books. It was originally going to be 3 before suggestion from Louise, which was actually cool. I didn't expect that. It's Amazing Spider-Man 429 through 431 as well as, what is it? What If 104? 108?
Let me check.
I wasn't. I had it up and then I lost it.
108. That's the one.
108. Okay, so the What If 108, which dovetails off of the Cosmic Carnage story that we're going to be covering today.
Mhm.
So, where we were in Amazing last time, it's been a while since we visited this book on the show, is Doc Ock is back, and there's lots of ninjas, and there's lots of black tarantulas, and there's lots of nonsense. And this book is very weird, and it's not at all like Amazing Spider-Man has really ever been, and ever will be, maybe. So these 3 issues really kind of just turn left because it kind of has nothing to do with anything else, which I think is almost a good thing. And we're getting to this point. We're getting to this point in Amazing where we need to wrap up this thing with the Black Tarantula, and then we also need to, the big crossovers are coming up in the form of Spider Hunt and Identity Crisis. So those are exciting to get to. And then honestly, after those, it just becomes whatever the hell it wants to be until it ends. So that's I think Amazing is so interesting in this time period. I don't know how much of it you've read, but it's a weird comic. You feel the main flagship books feel like Spectacular and Peter Parker, and Amazing is kind of just off in the corner doing whatever it wants.
No, yeah, this is definitely an era of the Amazing title that I don't have too much experience with, because I did read 430 and 431 before. I've read those multiple times. I'd never read 429 before, so this was like my first time reading it, and instantly it was just kind of like, what is going on?
Well, it really does
where am I
just
right now?
kind of throw you into a time period if you're not super familiar, because everything is so interconnected between the 4 books. It's just like things happen in that one, they're referenced in this one, or it just completely ignores it at some points. But I mean, like the highlights of Amazing as of right now in the time period is like there's an Electro story, and that's kind of been the only thing that's been really great. And then you have this big mystery of like, who is this? Who is that? And there's lots of ninjas. If you love ninjas, you'll probably love it. They're everywhere. Ninjas and assassins and
Did Tom
interesting stereotypes.
did Tom DeFalco write like a lot of the issues before this? Is this just part of like
Yeah.
a big run of his?
Yeah, so he's the main writer on Amazing at this point. He
Okay.
continues like from hopping on when Ben became Spider-Man. This is still part of that, so he's still going.
So did Tom DeFalco create Black Tarantula and all that?
Yeah, and then he uses Black Tarantula and Spider-Girl and stuff.
No, yeah, that's what I was going to bring up, because I actually have a big relationship with Spider-Girl, where that was one of the books that really got me into comics in the first place. And yeah, I was just thinking about the fact that like Black Tarantula has such a big role in that series, and that it is written by Tom DeFalco. So I just think it's interesting to find out that he created the character, because I wasn't even sure of that.
Yeah, he does a lot more in Spider-Girl than he does in this.
No, yeah, it's a much better book than these 3 issues kind of led on.
Oh, I just mean in Amazing in general. Like I've never read all of Spider-Girl. I've read I used to read those like digests that they had in the early 2000s. That's the only like experience I ever had reading them.
Oh, you should definitely give it a try, because
I know it's so Clone Saga coded. Everyone, all my best friends are like obsessed with Spider-Girl. I just haven't like sat down to read all of it. But from what I know, like the Black Tarantula is kind of a background character in Amazing until like the end, when he pops up and is like, we have to wrap up my story. But in Spider-Girl, there's just a lot more to it. So I think that's always interesting, and especially because I love this stuff. I know I would like it. I just have to dedicate time to reading it. What's time?
It's definitely worth a try. I ran through, because I read a lot of it growing up, but I had never read it like all the way through, because I mean I was a kid. And around like 2 or 3 years ago, I decided to run through the entirety of the series all 100 issues of the original series plus like the 30 odd issues of the sequel series. With a friend of mine, like we actually read it together. And I don't mean like individually, like we actually like sat down and read it together, which was an interesting experience. That I've never replicated again, but it was really fun. And it was because I was trying to introduce a friend of mine to the character because I kept insisting to him that he would like it, and I was right. I mean, he stuck with me the entire way through.
It's impressive. It takes a lot for someone to do that, I think.
No, yeah, absolutely. Especially because this is somebody who doesn't really read comics very much. So the fact that he was so invested in the book that he stuck through over 130 issues of it with me kind of says a lot about how fun of a series it is.
Well, now I got it. It's definitely on the list of things to do. I got kind of like burnt out of Marvel stuff for a second, so I kind of stopped reading or like was rereading a lot of like older stuff that I was really into. And then I had this show, so I was like, I'm just kind of everywhere right now. But it's definitely something I will get to eventually because I've read the first probably like 20 issues in a row. I started
Yeah.
a couple years ago. And then whatever I read when I was a child, but I don't remember any of that. So it definitely is something that needs to be like looked at and given attention. Especially like I feel like after we're done with this show specifically, and I'll be done going through all of this stuff which came before Spider-Girl, and then I can be like, cool, hop into Spider-Girl and I'll have everything that I need to know. Because I mean I've read all these books before too, this amazing title. But revisiting it for this is like yeah, when I have to revisit it and I have to write notes and I have to really remember things for the show, it helps me, better get connected to it instead of just breezing past it.
No, yeah, it was interesting in a sense reading these and having to like write down notes as I was reading it because that's kind of what I do already when I read a lot of stuff because like I've said before, I've kind of considered doing content like this for a lot of the Venom stuff from the 90s. And, because of that, when I went through the entirety of like Venom's appearances from the late 80s all the way through to the late 90s, every single issue I, would write down what issue it was, who wrote it, who did the art, and then just a detailed little like recap and my general thoughts on it, ratings and stuff. But it was typically for like a hypothetical content, whereas this is for something that I knew I was going to be doing this week. So it was just interesting knowing, like, while I was writing it, like, oh, I'm actually gonna be talking about this.
You actually have to say them now.
I actually have to say this out loud. That's crazy.
I do the same thing actually. I have documents and documents and documents of stuff, especially Spider-Man. I have everything from the first Falco run, the Black Suit stuff, all the way to the end of the Clone Saga. Oh, and this, and every single one of these titles, all 4 of them. So I have all of those that are like short notes that were for me. But when I do the ones for the podcast, I have to rewrite them anyway. So it doesn't help me with that, but it's good for like just remembering and having it there is good.
No, for sure. I have those kinds of notes for the entirety of the Ditko run. I have it for a little over halfway of the Clone Saga. I haven't gone back to it because I kind of hit that era of the Clone Saga where I'm starting to lose a bit of interest and a bit of steam, and I started getting really busy with work, so it's just been hard to get back into since then.
Understandable.
Yeah, but
As someone who loves it, understandable.
I was like a third into the Ben Reilly omnibus because I have the 4 omnibus collections, and I ran through the first 2 pretty easily, but as soon as I hit that third one, it's like all the momentum immediately crashed.
You got to get through 500 pages of VR nonsense before you can get to anything good.
No, yeah, that's exactly where I am, is all the VR stuff, and I'm just like, I don't want to read this.
Please make it stop. It sucks because they do VR and then they immediately do another microchip story as the first sensational, like the first Ben Reilly Spider-Man story in Media Blizzard. It's like, can we fucking stop talking about chips? I'm done with these chips, man. But at least Media Blizzard's good. I love that story. But I mean, the VR stuff is
I remember, yeah, I remember liking Media Blizzard from when I was younger.
It's great actually. I love Media Blizzard, but it is funny that it goes from microchip for VR to microchip for TV. It's like fuck off, please just fuck off. Except one's good, so it's a little better. But yeah, I'm gonna hop straight into Amazing Spider-Man 429 if you're ready.
Yeah, sounds good.
To get it kick-started. So we've got Amazing Spider-Man number 429, titled The Price. This book was released on October 8th of 1997, written by Tom DeFalco, pencils by Joe Bennett, who is now the permanent artist on this book for the time being. Inks by Al Milgrom and Bud LaRosa, the legendary Bud LaRosa, and colors by Bob Sharon. In the suburban home of villains Titania and the Absorbing Man, old Crusher Creel comes up with the grand idea to cash out on the $1 million reward on Spidey by following in the footsteps of the Thunderbolts. Meanwhile, Spidey is out solving petty crime, but due to what is now dubbed the Osborn tapes, everyone fears for their life around Spider-Man. Despite trying to do good, even the cops are instructed to take him in. Pete escapes the scene and arrives home to MJ. She's very insistent that Peter should lay low for a while and let the heat die down. Peter reluctantly agrees, but we all know how that typically goes. Over in the home of Robbie and Martha Robertson, Robbie's having major doubts about Jonah and the Bugle. Martha wants what's best for Joe and encourages him not to let the Bugle dominate his life because it's not worth it. The news of Spidey's assault on Osborn has reached every corner of the Marvel Universe, main focus of this issue being the recently injured Daredevil. Spidey's a friend of Dee Dee's, and Norman is the father-in-law of Liz, who Foggy is currently dating. So Matt dons his horns and goes out to find Spidey. At the Bugle, Joe tries to initiate a sit-down with Jonah, but they're interrupted by Norman, introducing two new heroes, Thunder Girl and Lightning Bolt, who are there to try and claim the prize on Spidey's head. Pete and MJ go to school, where Peter senses someone watching him from above. Immediately breaking his promise to MJ, he suits up to find Daredevil. He explains everything to Dee Dee, who believes him due to Peter's heartbeat. Just then, a helicopter enters the scene, apparently working for the Bugle, in search of Spidey 24/7. The two new heroes are sent out by Norman to capture Spidey, but he also calls the police because he sees right through their facade. Spidey and Dee Dee begin to fight, figuring out pretty quickly who the two really are. It doesn't matter, though, because Spidey and Dee Dee will soon be dead. Joe heads home to spend lunch with Martha and explains what Norman did, hiring super enforcers to take down Spider-Man. He starts to say he doesn't know how much longer he can put up with it, but is cut off by news of the scuffle and the identities of the Thunder and Lightning duo. He goes to the Bugle to take the rest of the day off and tells Jonah he's questioning his future at the paper. The fight continues as Absorbing Man accidentally hits the helicopter from earlier and causes it to spin out of control. Spidey saves the pilot, but Titania isn't so lucky. Her battle with Daredevil led her to being in full range of the copter. It impacts her and explodes. Crusher tries to save her, but he absorbs the properties of the fire. Spidey gears up in some protective web gear and goes to save her. With the day saved, the police thank Daredevil, who corrects them saying Spider-Man is the real hero. Pete meets up with MJ, who obviously heard everything about Spider-Man battling villains on campus, and scolds Peter. He broke his promise, and she's in no mood for lame excuses. End of 429. This book is so typical DeFalco Spider-Man in my mind, but I'm curious to think what you felt about it.
Being a lot more familiar with his work on Spider-Girl, it's very similar to a lot of Spider-Girl, but also just not as fun. Still fun in its own right, for sure. But overall, I just kind of had a lot of questions while I was reading it. But it had a lot of great moments that kind of reminded me of what I like so much about Spider-Man, So overall, I had a pretty positive experience reading it.
That's good. I think for me, I'm so almost tired of Amazing at this point, going through this. The last story DeFalco brought Doc Ock back to life using a microchip. So,
Uh,
like, I'm just kind of going crazy at a certain point. I think it's a good, just like filler one-off issue,
mm,
but also I'm kind of tired of the way Mary Jane is in this time period,
yeah,
because in almost every single story so far, they have had to create something to make Peter and Mary Jane argue,
yeah,
or Mary Jane is like really doubting her relationship with Peter. Um, which in some cases I completely understand, because I mean, the loss of your baby, the return of Peter's greatest foe, like that causes a lot of problems. But
yeah,
especially here, it's the whole promise me you won't be Spider-Man, promise me you won't be Spider-Man, and he goes, I won't be Spider-Man, and then he immediately breaks it. That's just, it kind of gets, it's annoying because I know it's coming,
yeah,
and it spoiler alert, it literally happens in the next issue as well.
yeah.
So
It
it's
does.
just kind of tiring in a way. But other than that, I mean, this is kind of just a fun, nothing comic where two characters we haven't seen in a while in Spider-Man get to fight Spider-Man, and Daredevil's here. Seeing him here was cool. I don't know anything about his solo book at this time, obviously, because I'm guessing.
Yeah,
I don't really read Daredevil. I'm not really into that. But him being here was cool. I really like, obviously, I think the best thing about this book was the progress of Joe Robertson, because we've had this kind of
hmm,
issue with him for the past couple issues, and especially here, he like
yeah,
is really doubting his place with Norman fully. Like, Norman owns the Bugle at this point, half of the Bugle, pretty
hmm,
much all of it, because of blackmail. Um, and I like that he has to do this whole thing with, the conflict with his wife and the conflict with Jonah, and later on he does leave and like do something, which is really cool, and I really love that. I can't wait to get to that. It's an identity crisis, but um, as it is right now, I think that's probably the best part of this book. Um, and I like DeFalco's voice for Peter. Like, I just like the way that you can tell that that's Peter Parker, because he's been writing him since the 80s. Just, he knows what he wants to hear out of him.
yeah. I absolutely agree with pretty much everything you said. I also think what they do with Joe in this book is pretty good. I I'm not too happy. I guess as a spoilers, I'm not too happy with what they do with him in the next two issues, because it ends up feeling like they're just kind of repeating a lot of what they said in this issue over and
they,
over
they do that a
to a
lot.
nauseating degree.
He shows up in the earlier in the Electro story that's a little bit before this.
Yeah,
He like saves one of like Black Tarantula's partner ninja enforcer people,
yeah,
and it's this whole thing with his wife, and it's kind of just the same thing. So like, they've been building this up for a while, and it is kind of just like, get to the point already. But yeah, a lot of the stuff is
Um,
drawn out because, I mean, it's month to month, so I guess they just do whatever they want.
all right. I did write down a lot of notes about like random things that caught my attention.
Sure, yeah.
Um, when let's see, Absorbing Man had mentioned earlier that he had gotten the idea to basically, like do this kind of like fake hero stunt from the Thunderbolts, right?
Hmm.
And I thought, oh, it's because maybe he could tell that the Thunderbolts were actually the Masters of Evil in disguise, and like because he worked with them at some point, has had history. He's like, oh, he can see through it, and thought that was brilliant, and they should do that. And it turns out it's just the name.
Yeah.
It's just Thunder Girl and Lightning Bolt, and I just thought that was. I don't know if that was like an intentional joke. I don't think it was, but I thought that was amusing that that was not the case. But I thought it would have been interesting to kind of explore that idea of him being able to see through their facade and know that, you know, oh, these guys are people have like they're supervillains. They're masquerading and they're like using this kind of like status as heroes to get what they want, you know? And we can do that. I thought that would have been a more interesting angle than just, hey, look, there's new heroes with thunder in their name. I thought that's what they were going to do, but
Yeah, I mean, it could have been both, honestly, but
Mhm.
it's who knows at a certain point, because again, they're kind of stupid, so I don't even know if it's like if he would be able to see through them, because he's kind of just like a stupid idiot.
Yeah, I guess I understand that. I think it would have been like a nice touch at least to explore
No, I
that.
agree. I mean, if I'm willing to bet, I think it's a little bit of both. In my mind, I perceived it
Mm.
as if like he kind of saw through their facade. So,
Mm.
but that's just
Um,
how I saw
and
it.
another thing was that I really liked the flirting between Peter and MJ when he's like seeing her off to classes, and it kind of reminds me a lot of what like the best aspects of the marriage era was. You know, especially during like the Michelini stuff, was how you could really tell that this married couple could not keep their hands off of each other. They're just like really enthusiastic and playful. And, you know, for as much as we can talk about how kind of irritating a lot of her problems with him in the issue are, I'm still glad that they're able to kind of put that stuff in there to kind of remind us as an audience why these two are together in the first place, you know, and how much they kind of really enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, and that's what's honestly so great about this time period as a whole, because whenever they do, like I said, they implant those things to have arguments and like all this
Hmm.
stuff, because they're in the end, Ralph Macchio, Bob Harris, and co. are really trying to dissolve that marriage. But
Yeah,
these writers do care so much about the marriage, everybody that's working on this, because you
yeah,
got Mackie, who's been writing it since 94. You have DeZago, who's been writing it since 95. You have DeMatteis, who's been writing it since fucking 89. Like, all of these people really do care about this marriage, and
hmm,
no matter how many conflicts they have to put in their story, whether it be editorial or they're trying to cause, soap opera drama for comics,
yeah,
they do have incredible, loving character moments. I mean, especially DeMatteis, if you ever get the chance to read all of this spectacular of this time period,
yeah.
of course he loves them the most, it seems. So that's
Really?
very, just like in that book, is like very much like their love is
Yeah.
power, because I mean he makes Mary Jane beat the chameleon, so it's like it's just fun stuff like that. I do love that in this issue and in every book at this time. That's one of the best parts of this era, is no matter how
Mhm.
many conflicts are thrown their way, like they are the power it couple, and they always do love each other, and at the end of the day they bounce back. So,
Yeah.
but here,
You
especially focusing on this, it is very good. I agree with you there.
you also mentioned that you really liked DeFalco's voice for Peter, and I also had it written down that I really love his like dramatic inner monologue
Yeah,
because it's always kind of been one of the most important aspects of a good issue of Amazing Spider-Man for me because it's just it's been there since the beginning. It's just this very over dramatic inner monologue where he's just kind of almost doing like a like Stanley once kind of compared it to Hamlet, you know? And like he'd made a joke about how, oh, Hamlet's pretty good too, you know, and I think that's pretty fun. It's a good comparison to make because that's exactly what it is. He's very much just kind of like, you know, just talking about how like this big like opera of life that he's dealing with, you know, and I thought it was pretty decent here, you know, when he was talking about all the enemies that are currently after him. It's pretty standard stuff, but you know, you really miss it when it's not there.
yeah, that specifically is when you get a
Mhm.
writer who he doesn't jive with it that well. It's just kind of
Yeah.
like word spaghetti. Whereas this is like, I'm having fun reading this, even though, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just him talking about what pants he's gonna wear, like something like that. Um, did you? Is this your first? Well, Joe Bennett drew stuff in the Clone Saga, but besides
Mhm.
that, is this kind of your first foray into his work? Have you seen him in other things?
I think yeah, this probably is just kind of like the extent of my knowledge there.
And I think this is super interesting because he was main penciler on Spider-Man Unlimited right
Oh,
at the
yeah.
end of the Clone Saga.
Hmm.
So that work versus this work looks entirely different, because I feel like here he's even the issues he did before this, because he drew some fill-ins prior to this when he's main penciler.
Hmm.
It's very like he's trying to be the bridge between like the 90s style and sort
Hmm.
of like the 70s 80s style. And I think it's pretty interesting because in some panels it's like that just looks like an old school Spider-Man, and but at the same time his like Titania has massive fucking boobs, so it's like you're still very much in the 90s.
Yeah.
But the way he draws his Spider-Man, he's got the 90s Ramita Senior style, where he's got the kind of like mid-sized eyes and the giant spider on the chest, and it's very kind of classic. So I wouldn't say big fan. I'm a fan of it. I do
Yeah.
think I prefer his work during the Clone Saga though, but it could just be bias. I feel like whenever I say
Yeah.
that, it doesn't matter. It's just negated by the fact that I love the Clone Saga.
I was honestly pretty pleasantly surprised by how much this felt kind of like a throwback to that 70s era of Spider-Man comics. You know, it really doesn't feel quite as 90s as a lot of the other stuff surrounding it tends to feel.
Yeah, it's also a drastic change visually
Hmm.
from the last artist who was on the book, Steve Scrose. So it's like night and day between these two artists too, which I think is interesting.
Another little moment that caught my attention because I thought it was silly was Professor Howard following Peter into a dead-end alleyway for a talk. I
But you
also
can,
really appreciated that, like, Peter was so on edge when, like, and his relationship to the superhero community is a little strained as it typically is. So his first assumption when he sees Daredevil is that he's there trying to collect the reward, you know, for bringing in Spider-Man, as opposed to, oh, he's here to help me or check up on me. I just thought that was a nice little touch that he's, you know, kind of under that much stress that he's just kind of assuming anyone, like, who comes up to him is out to hurt him.
so I know I typically do a rating like I mentioned to you. I'm giving
Hmm.
this one like a 6 out of 10. It's above average, but it's not my favorite.
Yeah, I'd go around. I typically do out of 5, so
Oh
I'd
yeah, that's
probably
fine. You can do whatever you want.
3 out of 5, which is basically just a 6 out of 10. Yeah, it's about the same. My last little comment would be that I found it amusing that um Absorbing Man and Titania just got these costumes so quickly. I had to ask myself, like, did they make these themselves? Did they commission them? Who do you think designed them?
They probably know a guy, I'm sure. They have a lot of connections.
I'm just like,
Or they just went to the Halloween store, found matching lightning costumes, and were like, whatever. I guess
because
that's
like
it.
I had a lot of fun just kind of like thinking up scenarios in my head of like them talking to a tailor, like just kind of explaining the whole vibe to to the tailor.
Well, especially, I mean, like they wear them like 5 minutes before giving up. So it's like if they spent a lot of money to get custom tailored suits, they're just worthless now.
And yeah, and they got it so quickly because I'm assuming that was what, like a day after they made the plan in the first place.
Probably like a day or maybe two.
Like unless they just, you know, already had these costumes just kind of for kinky stuff, I guess. I don't know. I'm just like wondering, like, where are these costumes from? Where did you get these?
They get the idea, and then the box at the top on page like 4 says a few nights later. So they had like
Hmm.
2 or 3 days where they
Okay.
got these suits done.
Okay. That's slightly more believable. It's
Yeah,
like I know I can't get something custom made in that short amount of time, but
rush
you know
ordered.
they know people.
Yeah,
So what?
they know the supervillain people. All right, so let's get to the main event, the Carnage story. Ooh,
Ooh.
featuring covers by the one, the only Tom Lyle. And I feel like that might be part of the reason why these books are so iconic and sought after and expensive, because they're really good covers. And I barely ever see people talk about the inside of the book, only that the outside of the book is cool. So take that as you will. That's also just bias talking. But I am doing the first part of this story, and then Louise will be doing the recap for the last part. But we've got Amazing Spider-Man number 430, titled Savage Rebirth, released on November 12th of 1997. Written, again, by Tom DeFalco, pencils by Joe Bennett, inks only by Bud LaRosa, and colors by Bob Sharon. In a triumphant opening splash page, Spidey is celebrating the return of the heroes lost in Onslaught. See Heroes Reborn. Or not. It kind of sucks. In his excitement, he hopes to check in with the newly returned Fantastic Four. But after swinging by the old hideout, Pete remembers that it's been taken over by the new team of heroes, the Thunderbolts. But the Thunderbolts seem to be hiding something. Who knows? Above Earth's atmosphere, the Silver Surfer helps destroy an asteroid threatening to collide with a manned space station. He succeeds and heads down to Earth. Back at ESU, MJ is still not letting Peter off the hook for breaking his promise. To make things better, he makes yet another promise to cut back on being Spidey. Ugh. I wrote ugh. Over at the Ravencroft Institute, their new head is tired of the copious amounts of money used to sedate and contain Cletus Cassidy. As a cost-cutting measure, he dials back Cassidy's microwave emitter in his cell. Cletus wastes literally no time as he immediately becomes Carnage and breaks free, killing 3 guards in the process. At the Bugle, Joe tries to have a conversation with Jonah, but Jonah just blows him off. On his way out, Joe bumps into Jacob Conover, who was recently let go by Joe in the Bugle's cutbacks. Apparently, Norman gave him a call to work for the Bugle again. What is happening to this business? Pete arrives at the Bugle and is invited to a basketball game by Billy Walters. Pete accepts and offers to buy the beers and dogs at the game. Meanwhile, Martha is visiting Joe at the Bugle and gets into the elevator with some stranger. After she says Joe is her husband, it's revealed that the stranger is Cletus, and he wants her to deliver him a message. A scream is heard, and Martha is found injured, bleeding, with the message, "Carnage rules!" callback, in the elevator. MJ hears of Carnage's escape on the radio and almost faints. She knows what Peter will do. Pete suits up as Carnage attacks someone parked in a handicap spot. Overhead, the Surfer sees Spidey in battle and goes to join. As the Surfer arrives, Cassidy's symbiote freaks out and detaches itself from Cletus. Spidey tells Surfer that it's a symbiote, and Surfer knows all about them. Surfer sends the symbiote underground to try and destroy it, while Cassidy explains that the symbiote recognized the Surfer. Many symbiotes have been killed by him in the past, and it wants revenge. But the only way to conquer the Surfer is to bond with him. Thus, the cosmic Carnage is born. And there we go. Honestly, the book is pretty streamlined. I think I really enjoyed this one because of that, where it's kind of like everything happens in a decent sequence, and the Silver Surfer is barely in it until like the first,
the very end,
the second page, and the very end.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of
I do have a lot of thoughts. I do have a lot of thoughts about this one. I do want to preface though. I live next to a church, and the bells are going off right now, and
that's fine.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that because
I can't even really hear him, so you're fine.
Okay, that's good. But my first little tidbit of information that I wanted to throw out there is that the title Savage Rebirth is actually in reference to the titles of the individual issues in Carnage's first story arc from ASM 361 to 363. Those were titled Savage Genesis, Savage Alliance, and Savage Grace, respectively.
I didn't remember that, so that's pretty great.
Yeah, just thought that was a fun little bit of information that, because the Carnage symbiote's getting a new host in this, maybe we should bring back that motif from his first appearance.
And that makes sense, because I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, I think Tom DeFalco was still editor-in-chief at that time when those books were coming out, so he would remember that.
But yeah, I actually have a personal attachment to this issue in particular, because it was one of the individual comic issues that I owned when I was a kid. I would always go into this one comic shop in the city, because I live near Chicago, and it was the only place I knew at the time that sold comics like this, and I would sift through all of the back issues for Spider-Man and Venom, and this was like one of the rare times that I would actually find a Carnage issue, just loose like that, so I would read it front to back constantly, and just kind of wore it out. I still have it somewhere in my collection, but I don't really know where. But yeah, the like you said, the Tom Lyle cover is absolutely gorgeous, and it's what sold me to get it when I was a kid. And I guess back then it wasn't so hard to find because it was only like $10. So
Yeah, I think it's like, I don't know. The next one is definitely more expensive, but I think this book is usually sitting around like the $60 to $50 range ish.
gotcha.
So it's definitely gone up quite a bit. I think I paid like $30 for mine years ago.
Well, mine must be in terrible condition because I've had it since I was a kid. But
Hey, that's the best part. I'm not a stickler for like the condition. When a book has been
yeah,
loved, man, that thing, like, it's honestly more pretty to me than a mint copy because it means someone actually really cared about it.
no, yeah, that's me with my trade for Maximum Carnage because for that one I actually when I was like 6 or 7. I intentionally like started to save up money from like my allowance in order to be able to buy it because I'd seen it at a bookstore that no longer exists, but I had seen it and I had asked them to buy it for me and they were like, that is $30. We're not going to get you a $30 book. You're a child. And I was like, okay. And I like, with my allowance, I would just save up enough to be able to get it. And then when I had $30, I asked them like, can we go get it? And they took me and they covered the taxes because I was a kid who didn't understand that taxes were a thing.
You pulled a fine, I'll do it myself.
Yep, and that book is it is torn up. It is like the cover's peeling off. There are pages missing. It is very yellow from age, but I love it. And typically when I read Maximum Carnage, that's how I pull it up, and I just I'll even read it with the missing pages.
So
Like
you can feel it in your mind, I'm sure.
Yep, I remember how it plays out. I don't need the missing page, or I can just look it up if I really need it. But yeah, for this issue, I definitely enjoyed it. Out of the 2 issues, I definitely prefer this over 431. I do have some issues with 431, but this one, like you said, it's a lot more streamlined, a lot more straightforward, and yeah, that very much is the strength of the issue. There were a lot of like just individual moments that I really enjoyed, and I wrote down a lot of them, like Peter envying the Thunderbolts for being so accepted and loved by the city that they get all of these resources while he gets hunted and hated by the masses. It feels straight out of a Ditko era issue, and it's ironic that he's talking about them having taken over the Fantastic Four's building because back in the Ditko era, Human Torch was the one that he would usually complain about like that. It's just like, I don't know if that's like an intentional detail at all, but I just thought that was fun.
When it comes to Tom DeFalco, I'm always like, I think everything's kind of intentional. He just knows every character inside and out from working at Marvel for decades and decades and decades and decades. So
yeah, it feels intentional. Like I don't know, I just like that little detail that was there. I also like the touch that Peter had such a streak of bad things happen to him recently that some quote unquote good news, as he calls it, makes him overreact and not take into account the danger of putting on his costume. Hearing that the Fantastic Four and the Avengers were alive again after seemingly being dead. It definitely would seem like a light in a consistent stream of darkness for him.
I think it's really cool that. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, yeah.
I think it's really cool that in Amazing Spider-Man 416, we get to see Ben Reilly mourn the loss of the heroes from Onslaught. And now here we get to see Peter celebrate the return of the heroes from Onslaught. Both written by DeFalco, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a nice attention to, because I feel like a lot of lesser titles wouldn't have even addressed how that character would feel about such a big event happening in the background, especially since it doesn't factor into the story very much, Like I feel like a lot of people would just kind of separate the book from everything else that's going on, just kind of like, we don't have to address that these big things are happening, but it's like, no, Peter would care about that. Peter would take notice of that and actually have something to say about it. It would influence his emotions and his actions in his day-to-day life.
Especially when he has such an attachment to those characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of them he knows very personally, so it definitely makes sense.
I also thought it was funny that 5 security guards for Carnage was talked about like it's overkill. Like only
Yeah,
5, really?
that guy definitely did not know anything. It's a big plot point in Spectacular that Ashley
Mhm.
Kafka is fired for
Yeah,
a myriad of reasons, and like this dude just like sucks. Like
it's
everybody taking
actually
over Ravencroft doesn't know shit about anything.
it's interesting. If I remember correctly, Carnage: It's a Wonderful Life, which I brought up earlier, kind of ties into that idea because I might be misremembering details, but kind of the plot of that was that Ravencroft had been really slipping in its standards, and like it was kind of being forced to like no, yeah, because part of the plot of that story is that she's leaving and she's kind of like trying to tell everyone like, yo, don't underestimate this motherfucker, like like don't, like, conditions are bad right now, but if you let them get it any worse, like you're screwed basically, and that's exactly what happens here. I also just found it very amusing that this guy's plan backfires immediately. Like the second he turns off the microwaves, it's just instantly he's just escaped. I thought that was very like comical in a,
It
in a
is
good way.
extremely comical that he's literally like, he won't notice. He's so brain dead, and then literally, yeah, he turns it off, and it's like, oh well, shit.
Yeah, it's like moments like that that I feel a lot of other people would consider it like cheap, a bit of maybe like plot convenience, but it's written in a way that is just kind of entertaining, like it's intentionally kind of stupid in a fun way, as opposed to it being, because at the end of the day, it is just like we need Carnage to be out of Ravencroft. Let's just get him out. But they could have done it a lot more cheap, if you know what I mean. Like they still handled it with like, in a fun way, which I appreciate.
It's the classic fun comic book format, so I'll
Yeah.
never complain really about situations like that.
And speaking of the art, this is some of the best that Carnage has ever looked. There's like a certain aura that 90s Carnage has that has kind of been lost since then, in my opinion. That like he just has a particular look, that like Bagley introduced and a lot of the artists throughout the 90s really kept to, that around like the 2000s onward, they stopped keeping to that look and it started becoming a lot more generic, a lot more just Venom but red, you know? When he very much has a distinct look that is very different from Venom, that I really like, with the pink mouth, the sharp, like black needle teeth, the curvature of the eyes, and the way that the black forms around the red. It looks really great here. This is like one of the better examples of
And
that
and
design.
I like that he's not like super scrawny either, because a lot of that when you get
Yeah.
Carnage, he is pretty like, but he's just kind of like a built dude here, especially like when
Mhm.
you just see Cletus Cassidy in the like elevator. He's pretty like built, and I like the
Yeah.
way that Cletus is drawn here too, just like that, and that insanity is just like, especially in that one close up panel of like his smile when he reveals himself in the elevator. It's like, yeah, that feels right. Some things just feel right, and that feels right.
It definitely makes me wish that, because as far as I know, Tom DeFalco didn't write too many Carnage stories. I know like there's a Carnage storyline in Spider-Girl that was really great, but it didn't involve Cletus Cassidy. So like I would have liked to see more, DeFalco stories that involve Cletus, because I feel like he handled them mostly pretty well in these 2 issues.
Yeah, it'd probably just be here and whatever he contributed in Maximum Carnage. So
But yeah, I since we were talking about Robbie in the last issue, his integrity has always kind of been like the feature that makes me enjoy him so much as a character. So I like that's kind of the thing that we're focusing on in these couple of issues. I do wish it was a little less repetitive, but I like that that's like the struggle that we're focusing on with him. That like we're actually like we're showing that integrity and how like he's struggling very much to work at this place when he has such an attachment to it, but it's not the place that he fell in love with anymore. And he's starting to feel like like it's lost its integrity, and he doesn't want to lose his.
Yeah, and he's not wrong. Norman makes the place a shithole.
I thought Martha's run-in with Cletus in the elevator was pretty creepy. But I'm not really sure why he didn't kill her, besides plot armor. With how much Robbie's been going through lately, I thought like his I feel like it's crazy to say, oh, we should kill Martha, but like I thought, it could be an interesting way to take the story, if she was murdered in this like random act of violence at the Bugle by this villain who in the past has made it clear that he hates what the Bugle represents, all while Robbie is dealing with what the Bugle is turning into currently, and if he even still has a place there. Like, I guess I'm just saying, like, it
He'd
could have
make his
been
decision pretty
interesting.
quickly at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, which is why I think, like, maybe, like, that would have been more interesting, and also it would have fixed a lot of my issues with the next part of it, where it feels even more like, all right, we're spinning the wheels, can we just get on with it? But I doubt they were willing to just kill off a member of the supporting cast like that. But I think for the story, it could have been really great if they were going to do that. Because as is, I'm just kind of left wondering why he didn't kill her.
Well, and really, when it comes to killing a character from the supporting cast, from my recollection, this is really the only time that Martha Robertson has been relevant, like as a main part of the story in a long while, like at least probably like 10 years, unless she's randomly a supporting character in another like not amazing title that I'm not remembering right now. At least the past 5 years, nothing has been done with this character. So I mean, it's not someone that's like integral, and they're not opposed to killing like characters that aren't directly related to like the main plot. But I guess it could be seen as a form of like fridging.
Yeah,
If
I guess
they were gonna do it, while Robbie's not the titular hero, I mean, it is still like killing his wife to get him to do something. But I don't know. It's kind of it's a gray area for sure.
It is. I guess I'm just looking at it from the perspective of both whether or not it's in character for Cletus Cassidy to leave her alive, and
To
also
literally not kill somebody when he's willing to kill everybody else. Yeah,
yeah,
I see what you're saying.
that, and just I feel like there is story potential there because of what that would kind of spell out for Robbie in this like point of conflict he's having. Is for like he could have we could have had this struggle of like, hey, she was trying to get me to like quit yesterday, and I decided not to. Like, I decided to hold off just a little bit longer, and if I had quit, she wouldn't have been at the Bugle in the first place.
Yeah.
You could have had that angle as well. It's just but I understand that idea of like you don't want to have the female character kind of only really exist to push the male character forward, but at the same time, isn't that kind of already what she's doing?
Exactly. Yeah. No. Being like the lead force to be like quit. It is exactly.
Yeah, and if that's all you're gonna do with her, then you could just push it a step further. Because
What we're saying is kill more women in comics.
not at all what I'm saying. I'm just interested why this one particular one didn't happen.
Yeah, I know. I'm just playing.
The one time it would make sense.
Yeah, kill women when it's necessary.
But this issue has one of my favorite like one of my personal favorite Cletus Cassidy gags in it, which is another reason why I have a personal
The
attachment to it.
handicap
And it's
parking.
the handicap parking.
That's really good. And I love that Spidey agrees with it. Where
Yeah,
he's just
yeah,
like,
I
you
have that
parked in the
written
handicap
down.
spot? You deserve this, man.
I love that.
Jeez, dude. No remorse. I mean, I agree, but damn.
But yeah, and it feels very much in character for Cletus Cassidy to, you know, be so angry about it in particular because he is so anti-establishment, anti-order, and he specifically airs out his grievances. He's like calling him this guy with a fancy job and a fat wallet who thinks he's better than everyone, and that's something I feel like a lot of Americans can relate to right now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I just think that it's interesting, it is very funny, but at the same time, it is rooted in who this character is intrinsically since his beginnings, and I just thought that was really fun.
I agree with you. That was really good. It's a fun issue. I think it gets a lot of character stuff right. And that's why, to me, it's an 8 out of 10. Wow.
No,
High
yeah,
rating. No way.
I was leaning towards like a 7.5 to an 8.
Yeah.
I guess like my last couple of notes on it would be, I thought it was really funny that when Carnage got the upper hand, he kind of dropped because like he typically talks in a lot more of like a crude manner, and then all of a sudden he gets the upper hand and he's talking very sophisticated all of a sudden. Like, he's using like these really big words to explain his thoughts. I'm like, what are you doing?
He has
Like,
to
you're
prove
really
himself.
enjoying,
It's a dick measuring contest.
like he's really enjoying himself right now. Like, you can tell he's having fun with this, and I always like that. Because he immediately drops that the second the second Silver Surfer shows up. He drops that and just goes back to his normal like way of talking. And it continues the so great tradition of symbiote hosts always being butt-ass naked.
Yeah.
I love to see it.
Even if they are wearing clothing before.
Yeah. Well, back then the clothes used to be just straight up be the symbiote itself.
Yeah.
That's not so much the case anymore, because a lot of writers nowadays forget that the symbiotes actually form clothing. Like, oh god, I'm just remembering that scene in Venom: The Last Dance where Eddie and Venom felt the need to steal clothes. Like we have lost the plot so very much from what these symbiotes used to be.
But it wasn't the only thing wrong with that movie, so I guess whatever.
Yeah. It's funny, right? I feel like so many people, like, I guess I'm going to go on a side little tangent here. So many people call that the best of the three. I'm going to be honest, I thought it was the worst of the three.
I think the best of the three is the first one.
I'm leaning towards the second one because I feel like it's a lot more fun than the first one. The first one, it's just kind of dull to me. But the third one, I couldn't stand it.
I didn't enjoy a single second of that movie. So
I was very shocked because like I went into it with like everyone saying, "Oh, it's the best of the three." It's still not very good, but like it's better than the second one and the first one at least, right? And like, oh, it starts to finally understand what people like about this series. And then I watched it and I was like, that was like the least enjoyable of the three. That was
who
the
paid
most
you?
like yeah, like who? What are you all? Why? What movie did you guys watch? I'd rather watch that. Because what the fuck was this? But yeah. Final note is, I thought it was fun that they gave the Carnage Cosmic like these predator mandibles.
Yeah.
And it's weirdly enough not the last time that they would give a symbiote predator mandibles. It would happen to Toxin later on. So yeah, I just thought that was fun.
It's a cool design. I don't know who exactly designed it, whether it was Bennett or even Tom Lyle, but whoever did a good job. It's pretty cool. Pretty gnarly.
All right. You want to move on to the next issue? Or?
Yeah. Take the stage.
It looks like I accidentally wrote it down as issue 430.
No, that's fine. Do you have a release date on there? If not, I can pull it up really quick.
I do not have the release date. I have, yeah.
Let me get that really quick. Because I have to do that, otherwise I feel like I'm going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So, for context, this is Amazing Spider-Man 431, The Carnage Cosmic, which was released on December 10th of 1997.
Written by Tom DeFalco, with art by Joe Bennett, Bud LaRosa, and Bob Sharon. All right. So this issue picks up immediately where the last issue ended, with Spider-Man standing by a naked, symbiote-less Cletus Cassidy, writhing in agony, and the Silver Surfer fighting back against the control of the Carnage symbiote. Before Spidey really has a chance to do anything about it, the Surfer decides this is a battle he must fight alone, flying away and causing collateral damage on his way out. Peter saves some really ungrateful bystanders from the rubble, and Mary Jane worries about him from across the city, knowing that he'd never resist the urge to try and capture Carnage, despite that nearly killing him in the past. At the hospital, Joe is checking up on his wife, Martha, trying to wrap his head around why Carnage spared her, which annoys her, making her feel like he's viewing the situation from the perspective of a newspaper editor, thinking of the story rather than being concerned for his wife and glad that she's alive. Her explanation and theory for why he spared her doesn't really satisfy me, though. Peter comes running in with Cletus, who stops being a redhead for one page and now has black hair for some reason, to get him medical care and make sure that he's properly guarded by authorities as well. I like that Peter still views someone as vile as Cletus Cassidy as someone who deserves to receive immediate medical attention. It says a lot about his character. He gets chased off by police trying to arrest him, though. The Surfer takes the symbiote out into the cosmos, and we get to see the history between him and the symbiote race. He once encountered a planet overrun by symbiotes, and instead of attempting to communicate with either them or the hosts within, he sentenced them to be devoured by Galactus. The memory was passed along to the descendants of these symbiotes as a form of genetic trauma. In a way, Silver Surfer feels that the Carnage symbiote is punishment for his crimes under Galactus' ownership. Meanwhile, Peter frantically attempts to get help from the Avengers, and we get a funny sequence where he argues with Jarvis on the phone, who doesn't believe he is who he says he is, while bystanders throw tomatoes at him because of the reward on his head. Apparently, there's no Avengers right now. They haven't had enough time since they returned to establish a new team and report for duty. Makes sense, they deserve a little break after being dead. Unfortunately, it does leave Spidey shit out of luck in the help department. There's an entire page dedicated to Robbie and Martha discussing information that we already know and have seen them discuss multiple times over. It feels a bit wasteful to me, especially if you're going to not resolve any of it in that scene, but feels like a reminder of a conflict that the issue already reminded you of just a couple pages earlier. Peter weighs the options of allowing Cletus Cassidy to die after learning that he's experiencing advanced stages of stomach cancer, and that the symbiote was what was keeping him alive. In the past, it had been established that the symbiote had replaced his bloodstream, so whenever they'd be separated, it would leave Cletus in a weakened state near death. I'm assuming that's what they're referring to here, and that the doctor's just describing it as stomach cancer. And it's here that we get my favorite single page in the story. The Surfer, while bonded to the Carnage symbiote, experiences profound pain from being subjected to the memories of Cletus Cassidy, and the physical and emotional abuse that he was subjected to from a very young age. Previous stories delve into this aspect of the character pretty well. Obviously, Maximum Carnage and It's a Wonderful Life, and also Venom Carnage Unleashed. It's been established that Cletus's violent exterior and guise as an agent of chaos is actually a mask for a deep-rooted trauma from multiple years of abuse from his family, classmates, administrators at the orphanage that he was sent to. He's very much a broken, scared man hiding behind the appearance of evil incarnate, and the Silver Surfer can now see that. I particularly love the line, "A child born with a raw and bloody wound for a heart and a gaping, hungry maw in lieu of a soul." Love that. Surfer sees the pain of both the symbiote and Cletus, and in response, he offers empathy and compassion and light. After Peter has a run-in with some cultists who worship the X-Man Nate Gray, and they try to hurt him and call him a criminal, he throws his mask down in rage and considers calling it quits. This whole issue, he's been concerned with finding out a way to save the world from the threat of Carnage given cosmic power, and all he's been met with is nothing but disdain, vitriol, and tomatoes. He wonders how they'd fare against his threat without him. He goes back on this immediately after he sees a bright light in the sky soaring towards the hospital that Cassidy's in. Turns out the Surfer's compassion worked. He now has control of the symbiote and has come to reunite it with Cassidy. Peter and the Surfer scuffle, as he isn't enthused by the idea of Cletus being allowed to become Carnage again. Especially when they have the opportunity now to get rid of that monster for good. Peter's blinded by that anger until Surfer makes him remember that Cassidy is currently helpless and dying, and that they're the only ones who can keep him alive. We got a gag of MJ fainting when hearing about Carnage being bonded to the Silver Surfer. They break into his room and they fight off the guards in order to get the symbiote back on Cassidy, who immediately announces his intentions to go on a slaughterfest now that he's back in good health. Silver Surfer expresses his pity for Cassidy and encases him in ethereal energy that freezes him in place, unable to hurt anyone and forced to reflect on his actions for all eternity. Unfortunately, the next appearance of the character completely ignores this ending, as well as the detail of Cassidy's declined health when separated from the symbiote. The issue ends with Robbie handing over his letter of resignation to Jonah, who's weirdly surprised by it, although I thought from their most recent interactions that it was pretty obvious this was coming, or at least that it was being considered. Spider-Man even gets a final swing in the last panel as we close out the issue.
And there we have it. They finally did something with Robbie.
It's weird because I feel like they didn't do as much with it as I would have liked, and there's just little details about how they handled it that it makes me enjoy it less than I would have liked to. Especially just like, I don't understand why Jonah was so surprised and taken back by it when it felt like, he'd made his intentions pretty clear just 2 issues ago.
I think it's just because of all the turmoil Jonah is going through right now. Like at this time, it's just like I don't think he's fully there, because I mean, like, he just had his entire family threatened by a flaming pumpkin man, and now Norman Osborn's here, and like all this stuff, and he knows Norman is the reason his family was threatened, so he has to play along with all this, and it's just like blindsiding that his best friend is leaving despite, because in a lot of ways, I mean, like, they have argued before, they've had banter, but like in this instance, it's just, this is it. My wife almost died. She probably should have died, but she didn't. And and I'm done. So
I guess with you saying that, it's also just like, now I kind of wish it had even more weight. Like, it should have been a bigger moment than it was, and I don't know, because like I mentioned when I was recapping it, there was that one page that was just dedicated to information we already knew, and I was just shocked. I was like, why are we spending a whole page talking about this? It's like they're not saying anything that we haven't heard them say before, especially in this very issue. Like, we could have had this extra page dedicated to that moment, where it could have been 2 pages instead of just the one, so that we could have talked about it a little bit more and had more of a discussion going on between them, kind of delve more into the emotions that both of them are experiencing, because it's a pretty big moment, or at least it should be.
I think it's funny because you'd probably think it even gets worse with time if you continued to read these, because Robbie sure does quit the Bugle, but he doesn't stop investigating things, and so he uses a vacation with Martha as like a way to investigate certain like people. And I just think it just gets even worse. It's like, you're still not stopping. You're still doing it. God, I guess that's the curse of everybody in these Spider-Man books is they make these promises and then they just break them.
Yeah. Overall, I thought it was a good issue, but definitely on the messier side than the last one was. Um, it had to it had the potential to be a much more compelling story had it used its time a bit more wisely, and also if it just like fulfilled the promise of the premise a little bit more, because for a story where the Silver Surfer is taken over by the Carnage symbiote, he sure isn't doing a whole lot of Carnage things, you know?
Yeah, it's very just like, oh, he's taken over by Carnage, and then he flies away
Yeah, and
to have his little internal battle. Which, I mean, I guess if you're only stuck with one full issue to do this story, I can understand. But
yeah,
maybe they just shouldn't have done it at all if that was the case. Or maybe
and
made it like a mini series where this happens instead of
yeah,
a single, pretty much one shot at this point
I'll get
of
I'll get I'll
an
get more
episode.
into my thoughts on that when we get to the what if issue. But basically, my take on it is that it should have been a three-parter, and I think if you repurposed a lot of the what if issue, you could have had a lot of what's in that issue be like part three of this story here,
I would
you know?
agree with that.
But yeah, it's like, it's a lot of great stuff, like the inner turmoil. Like I mentioned, my favorite page being the one where he's experiencing Cassidy's memories. And of course, I have a little bit of bias there, considering like my love for that character. And, I appreciate that Mackie is, showcasing that and, talking about it, and taking this moment to really show what makes Cletus Cassidy and the Carnage symbiote tick, you know, in order for Silver Surfer to gain control of it. I think that's all great. That's all great stuff. It's just, I feel like it kind of comes at the cost of the potential of the premise itself. Um, it feels like the middle chapter of what could have been a longer storyline, but it just kind of ends.
Yeah, abruptly ends for sure.
Yeah. And there were just a couple of pages that chose to divert focus over to things that felt a little bit wasteful to me, like padding in a story that really doesn't need it.
That's the
And
detriment of doing it
like
in the flagship book
I
is you
wrote
still have to
down,
balance everything.
yeah, I did write down why do we have filler pages in a comic when it has such a cool idea. But yeah, I definitely understand. There's like it is at the end of the day like it has a supporting cast. There are storylines going on in the background. But that's why I feel like if you had stretched it out to 3 issues, you could have done that plus everything else you wanted to do. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I do think it is very like abrupt and precious real estate is wasted on Martha and Joe and the Bugle, and we probably could have just put it off for another issue. But honestly, we can't because the next issue is the big crossover issue. So it's
Oh
like,
damn.
oh, we can't waste any time because now he has to fight the Black Tarantula.
Yeah. Jeez.
So,
Like yeah,
I
there
think
were.
this is the problem of just throwing it in the middle of a bunch of stuff. If 429 wasn't a filler issue, we could have had a 3 issue thing with this. So
Yeah. As much as I liked, I mean, I still gave it a 6, but like as much as I enjoyed that story, you could have sacrificed it for making this a 3 issue story instead. You know,
and you
I
think
feel
they
like,
would have, considering it has to do with Carnage, and they know it was going to sell regardless.
and we could have had a third Tom Lyle cover.
It's true. Well, we do get a third one, the issue after the next one of Amazing, because he does the full issue. But still, yes, we could have gotten a third Cosmic Carnage cover, which would have been really cool.
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
I'll take any Tom Lyle.
yeah. Overall, I think I'd give it like a 7, 6.5 to a 7 around there.
I was at
Uh,
7,
yeah,
so
like the stuff that I like about it, like that inner turmoil between Silver Surfer and the symbiote. I'd say kind of is better than the stuff in the previous issue, but the rest of the issue kind of bogs it down a bit.
I'm in that same boat for sure. Where with the parts that I liked in this issue, I really liked, and then the
Yeah,
parts I didn't like, I was just like, can we get this over with? Can we move on? So
but yeah, there were just little. I kept bringing up the tomatoes because I thought that was really funny. Like, what are they doing? Like, what did they think they were doing there?
it's gonna get him. They're gonna beat him. That's his weakness.
I do enjoy that. I thought that was funny, and I'm glad that got highlighted.
It goes to show that people just like they'll try anything.
But yeah, overall, I'd say this was a pretty good two-parter. That should have been a three-parter, but
Definitely could have been worse.
it could have been a lot worse. It could have been. As someone who's read a shit ton of '90s symbiote stuff, it could have been a lot worse.
As someone who's read a lot of '90s Spider-Man, it could have been a lot worse.
So yeah, it's we'll take what we can get, really.
For sure. And now we can move to the what if issue, which was actually a suggestion. I did not intend on including this because, frankly, I didn't know it existed.
Nice.
I'm not super familiar with this era of what if outside of the Clone Saga issue they did, so I was intrigued to learn, and it was a good read. So I'm excited to go over it.
I funnily enough, I'd actually never read it before, so it's
Oh,
'cause
really? That's cool.
I'd known about it. I'd known about its existence for a very long time, and I kept kind of telling myself I would read it eventually. I was hoping to get it physically, but I could just never find it, and
Yeah, this era of what if
eventually
is really hard to find.
it is, and it eventually did get printed into an Epic collection, the Carnage Epic collection, I think, like Volume 3. But I could not be fucked to buy that because I didn't care about anything else in there. It's like $54, and there was only one issue in there that I actually wanted to read. So
I read a really shitty pirated scan of this issue.
I read it on
So
I read it on Marvel Unlimited. So that
okay, I didn't know which epic it was in. I saw that it was on Unlimited. I don't pay for Unlimited though.
fair enough. Yeah,
And I just like I was like, well, the only rip is this really old crappy one, so I guess I'll read it like that.
I hope it wasn't too bad.
No, it was like I could read it. It was fine. It just was like, damn, because I saw that it was on Unlimited, so it has been republished. I just couldn't find where, and I was like, whatever, it's fine. I'll just read whatever I can find. Usually, I'm team support the people, but I don't know. I own so much physically that I don't subscribe to a lot of those digital readers for that purpose.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's just. But I did read it.
I only really have Marvel Unlimited specifically for stuff that I don't want to purchase physically.
That's fair.
Because I do have a massive collection of like physical trades and all that. I have a lot of omnibus or omnibuy, I guess. I don't know. But and a lot of the times I want to read something that either has not been collected physically or that I just think is too expensive, not really worth putting on my shelf. It's just just like a whole lot of stuff where I don't have the highest hopes for it.
Yeah,
So I'm
that's
whatever.
super fair.
But yeah, this issue came out in May of the same year as the issues we just talked about, just like 2 or 3 months after, because that was in February, right?
Well, so the way the cover dates are, so if it was if the cover says May, it was actually 2 months before that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so cover date is when they take the books off the shelf typically.
Oh, that's fun.
For retailers. So it was March that it came out, and the Amazing Spider-Man issue was in December. So 3 months removed.
3 months. Yeah, I thought that was interesting that it was like only 3 months, and it actually kind of made me wonder if like maybe this is what Tom DeFalco wanted to do with that story, but he just wasn't given the time, you know?
Yeah,
Because
either
he did
something like
have,
that, or maybe he wasn't satisfied with how it went, so he was like, "Well, we're doing this what if title, so let's do it."
yeah, because like I thought it was interesting that in that specific issue, in the previous issue, Peter specifically tries to get the attention of the Avengers. There's a whole page dedicated to him trying to get the Avengers involved. And here they are getting involved, and it is because Jarvis ended up telling them, which I guess is the what if, is like, what if Jarvis actually bothered to tell them
Yeah,
what was going on?
I guess it's what if Onslaught didn't happen, or like, and they actually got to show up. But yeah,
It's interesting, and it makes me wonder if maybe, like, you know, Tom DeFalco wanted this to be like a part 3 to that, but he just wasn't given the time, so he's just like, fuck it, I'm just going to take the ideas I had for part 3 and just put it in a what if issue, because yeah, my question was like, what the fuck is the what if angle of this? Because like it really is just what if
the
the
what if
Avengers,
is literally what if they fight them, and I
yeah,
think
like
that's really funny.
what if the Avengers showed up, like Peter wanted them to, I guess.
When the name of the book is "What if the Avengers battled the Cosmic Carnage" or the Carnage Cosmic, it's like, okay, so I guess that's the book. Is what if they beat him? Cool, like sure.
No, yeah, I just, which is why it's even more like, okay, so I have to assume that these were just ideas he wanted to do that he wasn't able to, you know, for whatever reason, or maybe it is just like he realized after the fact. He was like, "Oh no, wait, no, what could have been?" Yeah.
I need to do more. I'm not satisfied.
But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. But I guess I could get into it. I have a much shorter recap of this one than the last one because a lot less happens. I guess.
Most of it is just fighting, so that's understandable.
Yeah. Let's see. But yeah, it was still written by Tom DeFalco, with art from, oh god, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce these right. Sergio Carriello, Keith Champagne, and Kevin Tinsley. I hope I didn't butcher any of those.
Shout out to Kevin Tinsley, the colorist on Spider-Man for Tom Lyle and Scott Hanna. There we go.
No.
I have to mention the Clone Saga at every waking moment.
But yeah, this issue picks up near the end of Amazing Spider-Man 431, as the Silver Surfer attempts to convince Spider-Man to allow him to reunite the symbiote with Cletus Cassidy. Right away, the story diverges from where it originally went as the Avengers arrive to intervene. I'm assuming in this version of events, Spidey's cries to Jarvis for their help actually did reach them. It seems now that Carnage is taking more control of the Surfer, and he attempts to kill Thor with this sick-ass move where he attaches a spike to Mjolnir as it flies right back towards him. I really like Captain America's speech as he tells Carnage that his puppeteering of the Surfer sickens him and that they'll put an end to it. Carnage gets one up on the Vision and then incapacitates all of the heroes through some cosmic fire shenanigans, and then he flies away. He has fun testing out his new cosmic abilities, being able to twist world monuments, create giant jet-eating plants, marshmallows that pass for clouds, tornado whoopee cushions. It's at this point in the book that I realize this is exactly what I wanted out of the original story. The Avengers discuss how things got so dire, and the possibility that they might not be able to remove the symbiote from the Surfer without killing him. The Avengers fight the Carnage Cosmic, but to not much success. Spider-Man convinces Firestar to use her heat abilities against him, which works enough to buy the Surfer enough time to briefly regain control. He flies, bonded to the symbiote, into the Earth's sun, as all the heroes watch on, honoring his sacrifice. Scene.
And there we go. I like the artwork in this a lot. I don't know if I've ever seen anything that this particular artist has done before, but I like the way that he draws Spider-Man's eyes specifically a lot.
No, yeah, I was really satisfied with the art, and I'm assuming this is an artist who probably works more so on the Avengers side of things, which is,
Yeah, that's
you know,
kind of what I was assuming. I think it's funny that Justice and Firestar are here also because they explicitly make sure to say that they are not part of the Avengers. It's like, okay. But it's cool to see Firestar fight a Carnage again.
yeah, I was
So
gonna
we get
bring that
that.
up. That like this isn't the first time she's been like basically told by heroes, "Hey, use your
Burn
powers
him to
against
death,
Carnage,"
bro.
and her not wanting to do so. This is
Yeah.
not the first time that's happened.
Demanding them to burn a man to death. Just do it, lady. Come on.
But yeah, this was really action packed, full of a lot of really fun moments, a lot of great action beats, and like I said, I think if you tweaked it a bit, specifically the ending, where like you could have had it so like when Silver Surfer regains control of the symbiote at the end, instead of flying off into the sun, that's when he like manages to push it off of like himself and back to Cletus Cassidy, and you could have had it end the way it did in that story, and this could have just been a three-parter.
This book does not concern itself with Cassidy's cancer at all.
Oh no, not at all.
It's like fuck that
It didn't
guy.
go.
He's dead.
It did not give a fuck.
That guy's fucking dead, and who cares? But
I thought
no,
it was
this is
funny too that like those two guards in who are protecting Cassidy say the exact same lines they said in that issue, but in
yeah.
completely different context.
No, for sure. I think this is one of those books that I think works a lot better. Like it's not an easy book to like recap and talk about. It's very much so like it's a book where they fight things, so you should probably just read it. Like in a
Yeah.
way it's hard to kind of explain exactly what's happening without going like and then these people fight and then this attack and then that attack and then it's just like a really gnarly book with really great art that
Mm.
has a I don't know, less than satisfactory ending, but it works for the what if format. Like you wouldn't want that last page to be like, you'd want the one final sacrifice and then the surfer would fly back down to Earth and be like, I'm not actually dead, guys. Haha. And that would really
It,
be the only thing that I feel like would change if you were to publish this as a third part.
yeah. Because yeah, you could have had that moment of like like I said, it's just as soon as he regains control because of Firestar, he's just like, fuck it, I've got control. I'm just gonna throw this bitch right back on the Cletus and call it a night. Yeah,
Yeah. Or just throw the symbiote into like containment or something, or whatever
yeah.
they do in a symbiote story.
They, man,
Lots
it's
of
always.
containment and lots of freezing and lots of fire and blah blah blah.
I had mentioned it earlier, but a lot of these stories kind of forget that Cletus and Carnage can't be separated without it being kind of fatal for
Yeah,
Cletus.
that was a big thing for me because when I was like, when they separate, like that's like his blood now. How does he even survive at all for longer than like
Yeah,
5 minutes? But
that's
I
why I
guess in
was.
a way it doesn't work for what this like the story they're telling. So they're just like, whatever. People won't know. The fucking 5-year-olds are reading this.
I also just kind of assumed maybe Tom DeFalco changed it to like maybe he just like wrote in the stomach cancer thing because like he didn't want to go through the whole process of explaining how it works. Like the
Yeah,
symbiote having replaced his bloodstream and all of that stuff. He's just like, fuck it, he has stomach cancer, whatever.
yeah. It's
Like,
just, and then it becomes the golden rule that they then use for Eddie, where the symbiote users just have cancer when they get unseparated. It's fine.
yep. Well,
You,
Cletus did it first.
yeah,
Cletus did it first,
but then
but
Venom had not cancer because he had fake gaslit cancer.
I still am not sure how I feel about either of those retcons because I already didn't like that whole like, oh, Eddie always had cancer and
Yeah,
like his addiction to the symbiote was actually because it kept him alive or whatever. I already thought that was stupid and completely ignored like context from so many different stories. But then, just I
But
guess like
fake cancer is fake
it,
cancer is a whole other level of like why? It could be the
yeah, because
same
it's like why
without
would it?
that.
Like I guess their justification was that the symbiote was trying to like make Eddie dependent or whatever.
Yeah.
But did it really need that? Because I felt like
At that point in their relationship, even as a not ultra Venom fan, it's like I don't think you really need that to be dependent. They're just kind of like they're bonded. It's just part of that addiction. That's what symbiosis is.
exactly. Yeah, I guess it's just like Donny Cates was not a fan of that change and decided he wanted to retcon it, even though like 20 years had passed and you didn't really need it.
Yeah, and his what was it like fake brother or whatever, fake sibling? I can't remember.
It was a fake sister, which
Yeah, fake sister.
yeah, because the sister was introduced in Venom Dark Origin, which most Venom fans kind of agree is not at all like a good Venom prequel story because it changes a lot of details about Eddie's like upbringing that do not at all like they don't fit in the same reality as what was introduced in Michelini's work.
Gotcha.
And it also portrays Eddie as a lot more of a scum individual than he really is. And I guess like a lot of it was just kind of like Spider-Man 3 synergy. They wanted to make him feel a lot more like a dickhead kind of.
Yeah,
But
that makes sense.
that's just not what his character was. And for some reason they kind of changed a lot of like that story is really strange because they seem to portray Eddie's upbringing as being like poor, or at least like he looks poor. He has like this sister we'd never heard of and all that. And his father didn't seem that uncaring in Dark Origin, whereas like originally we were established as like, oh, Eddie's father was actually quite wealthy and very much absent in his childhood, you know? And as far as we knew, he had no siblings, so I don't know where the hell all that came from.
They made it up because they wanted to.
That's typically how it goes,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But yeah, I thought this What If issue was I appreciate that it exists. I had a really fun time reading it. I think because of how incomplete that original story, like that original two-part story kind of feels, like having this makes it feel a bit more complete to me, I guess. Even though I know it's not canon, it's also just like I feel like I had a more complete experience reading all three of these as opposed to just those two issues.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we added it on top. I had a great time with it too, and I agree that it definitely makes it feel whether canon or not. It's still like, well, my brain is satisfied. There you go.
Yeah, I definitely wish it was canon. Besides the Silver Surfer dying part, I don't.
Fucking exploding.
It would have been pretty funny if he died in a Spider-Man
That would be
comic.
pretty funny, I will say. And then his book just has to be abruptly canceled or switched to something else. Probably isn't the first time that's happened. It won't be the last.
Oh, poor Miss Marvel.
Yeah. Yeah. For a more modern example, yeah. Huh? Yeah. Those were this week's books. I'm really thank you for joining me. I greatly appreciate it.
Of
Trying to
course.
do these weekly episodes has been very challenging. So anytime I can get someone to make it a little bit easier, I definitely
Mhm.
appreciate it. Because even with some of the other episodes with people, I'm still having to write all the recaps. So it takes up a lot of time. I
Well,
had a great time reading these, and it was really great to
I,
get to talk to you. Feel free to plug yourself if you'd like anything that you're doing, anything you have.
I mean, honestly, yeah, just like because I don't really do too much. A lot of the work that I'm doing is currently like still being worked on because I'm working on my first feature film as well as I'm starting production on my second feature, and I've got other stuff in the works right now. I don't post as much as I'd like to. I definitely would like to start posting a lot more. But yeah, check out my Instagram, LOUISJ.ZAMORA.
I'll write it out in the description too for people. So
Thank you.
yeah, no problem.
But
Definitely,
yeah,
definitely follow and show support and all that great fun stuff because it's good to be a good person.
I hope I did a good job. I hope everyone enjoyed my presence here. This is my
This
first
is one
time
of the
doing something
longer
like this.
episodes that we've had, so I would say you did a good job in terms of the discussion. So most of the time we don't really hit 2 hours, so
Oh, did we? Did we hit 2 hours?
it's just about to be. It's like a hour 54. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, definitely a longer one, which I don't mind because the
Well, yeah,
last
I
one
had
I
a
did
really
was
fun time.
short. So the last
Mhm.
one I did was 40. The last one I did was 40 minutes. So this is quite a bit longer, which I'm cool with. And I know a lot of people that listen personally that like the longer ones, so I'm sure they'll enjoy it. But yeah, thanks for coming on. I greatly appreciate it. I think you did great. I assume
Thank
other
you.
people will assume so too. And as for me, everybody knows where I'm at Batchery Miro on everything. Check out Spider-Man Project Rescan if you want to read the books that Marvel doesn't have on Marvel Unlimited. And we'll catch you next time where I and whoever the hell is going to be on that episode, because it's still TBD, will cover the Peter Parker Spider-Man books leading up to Spider Hunt. So we'll catch you next time on The Forgotten Era. Goodbye.
See ya.